Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Living the Wildlife. I'm here today with Jon Munsterman of Pathfinder Wildlife Services. He is a certified wildlife control professional and the owner of Pathfinder Wildlife Services. And you can visit his website at pathfinderwildlife.com. We're very glad to have you here. And everyone here, you know, this is part of the Pest Geek podcast. We are going to get geeky on you today because we're going to be talking about otters. Otters are so cool. If you've never trapped one, the first one I've ever caught, I caught by accident. But they are really cool creature. And we're glad to have you here. And again, we don't have a sponsor for this particular episode. So if you're interested in sponsoring the Living the Wildlife podcast, definitely reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsult@gmail.com. Welcome aboard, Jon. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you giving me the time.
Good. Well, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, where you're from.
So I am based in what's called Snohomish, Washington. That's just a area about 45 minutes north of Seattle, Washington.
Okay.
So I tend to handle basically Seattle north. I go all the way to the Canadian border, and I also handle a lot of the island counties that are out here. I know a lot of people don't get to say they get to ride a boat to go to work, but I'm one of the few that do.
Cool. So sounds, usually when I hear water, I'm thinking money.
Yes, you are not wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful country out there as well.
No, it's a lot of fun heading out to there. Time's a bit of a thing, but a lot of times though with that waterfront, I do get a lot of calls for otters getting under homes. I know a lot of people deal with otters dealing in marinas and docks and whatnot. They tend to get under the homes because we have crawl spaces out here.
Right. So we're talking about the river otter, not the sea otter.
Correct.
Okay. So we're dealing with the river otter. So talk about a little bit of some of the challenges that are with otters and how your company, I mean, obviously you've developed some methods. I heard you speak at the National Wildlife Control Operators Association. That seemed to have been pretty well received. It's kind of a niche field, but the otter range is growing across the country. So, hey folks, listen up. You may end up getting an otter call sooner or later. So go ahead.
So I'm not really going to focus too much on the sea otter, but I want to definitely specify the difference between 3 different otter species, okay?
Good.
Because there's the river otter, the American river otter, there is the sea otter, and then as I spoke at the conference, what I call the internet otter. It's the thing you see on the videos, but people keep as pets and whatnot. So I'm going to give a little information to kind of differentiate between the 3. Okay. So just some basic info about the river otter, because I know a lot of people don't get into the nitty gritty. They can be anywhere from 15 to 30 pounds, depending on sizes. Average length is 30 to 42 inches. They don't hibernate. They are active all year long. So I do get calls summer, spring, fall, winter. They are not dedicated to water, unlike sea otters, because river otters can actually travel 20 to 25 miles over land in a day.
That's amazing.
So they're not water-bound by any stretch of the imagination. I've had jobs where literally a water source was a quarter of a mile away. And they're like, but the river's down there or the ocean's down there, and I have otters? Why?
Yeah. So what do you think the reason is why certainly we can understand the migration of them moving to trying to find new habitat, but why would they be a quarter mile away from water? I mean, that seems kind of weird.
They are roamers. I've experienced with them that they tend to, once a food source has been exhausted, like a stocked pond or a certain area has run out of a certain count of prawns, crabs, whatever they want, the whole group of them, a group of otters is called a romp for river otters.
A womp.
Romp.
Like romp. R-O-M-P. Okay. R-O-M-P.
Yes.
Misheard that. Sorry. Romp, okay. Everybody, with an R.
But what they'll do is they'll just start moving on, because I've had jobs where it was a stocked private pond, and in a week they wiped out the entire pond.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't even able to get out there fast enough sometimes. But when it comes to getting into homes, it's basically why any other animal would want to get into a home.
Right,
it's easy shelter. The other issue is a lot of us, almost all houses out here have crawl spaces. Mm-hmm. So, and ours require insulation and a visqueen or a vapor barrier underneath. So it's pre-made condo for the otters.
Yeah.
The other thing that happens is because they only put galvanized screen on these vents, they corrode and rust out in a matter of a few years.
The salt.
Yeah, the salt air just dissolves the metal.
Wow.
So that's why I say they're the ones that are the constant issue. Touching on the sea otter a little bit, just because I still get calls and I still get emails saying, well, it's a sea otter, you can't touch it. Not quite. They are tremendously larger. Males and females can get anywhere from 30 to 90 pounds, so hefty animals.
Yeah.
And they can get 3.5 to 5 feet long. They're big. People, it's a little deceiving how big they are out in the water. And with that, they don't actually need land. The way they're designed, their fur, the way their buoyancy is built, and with their oils that they coat their fur with, they literally have no need to go on land except, I feel like it. They have no food, water, shelter, breeding, no need to touch land ever.
Wow. Okay. And is there any legitimate damage calls with a sea otter? I mean, I'm trying to think of what they would do that would be a problem. Okay, no, okay.
I mean, oyster farms, I think, have been, or like people have like stocked breeding areas that they do.
That would make sense. Yeah, okay.
In inlets, but at that point, then they're actually under federal protection,
right? As
opposed to river otters, which are under state managements.
Sure. And it is, if you were going to get a permit, that would be the maritime. Is it a maritime treaty?
Yes, and because you have to coordinate with NOAA.
NOAA. Okay, there you go. And have you ever gotten one?
I have not.
You have not. Okay.
And I'm okay with that because that's literally water I don't even want to get into.
Okay. Okay. Well, then talk about the internet otter then.
So the internet otter, they're actually one of the smallest otter species in the world. These are what are known as the Asian small-clawed otter. They are, because of their size and their weight, they've been seen publicly mainly because a lot of places have allowed them to be sold and taken as pets, but that has since changed under different countries. It's usually, I want to say there was a big snafu in either Thailand or China. There was a local otter group that really got too much attention because all of a sudden they vanished. The whole family vanished, and it turned out that poachers had come in and taken the whole family and tried to sell them off as exotic pets.
Wow.
So it has been made internationally illegal to sell them as pets. In terms of size, they average 24 to 38 inches between males and females. And anywhere from 3 to 12 pounds. So you can see why they'd have a big interest in the pet trade.
Yeah, without a doubt. All right, so talk about your situation with river otters. How are you? Obviously, people are calling. What are some of the signs that someone has an otter living into their house? Do they see them? Do they
stink? The house is almost unlivable. They smell so bad.
How fast does that happen?
Overnight.
Really?
Yes. Like if not a few days, because otters are mustelids, so they all carry that ugly, nasty scent gland. So if anybody has ever owned a ferret, for those of you listening, if you know or have owned a ferret, one otter is about the equivalent of 20 ferrets living under your house.
All right. And so it's not from the defecation, it's just the glands.
It's a combination. Because they do mark inside the crawl space area. So you get the smell. They do defecate. They do urinate everywhere, and it's not like urine liquid. It's almost oily, so it's a mixture of it in there.
Okay, we may need to have another podcast about deodorizing that because I think obviously that would be a revenue stream for resolving that. So, what do you go about? What's your process for eliminating them from the structure?
Well, just like everybody else, you always start with an inspection, then get a process started. My process usually, because I'm dealing so much on the islands, usually starts with landscape management, like either cutting things away, building terraces, building gates, putting up fences, because otters aren't great climbers, not like raccoons, because literally where a raccoon can reach 6 to 8 inches over their head, the otter's arms and hands stop at their face. So they almost are missing a section of an arm per se, but it's all in the jointing. They just can't reach over their head. So they don't climb so much. They can still pull and press and push on things. Actually, their biggest mode of entry is to pretty much shove their face into whatever they need to. Whereas raccoons will peel it away. Otters just keep pushing and working and just shoving until they get their way in.
And the motivation for getting into a crawl space, do they feel the warmth? Is there a smell that's attracting them to the house?
Otters are natural denning animals. Like that's what they do is they have dugout holts is what a colony of a nest for otters is called a holt. They
Okay.
actually it's a dugout burrow. So a crawl space is pre-made for them pretty much already.
Okay. All right. And so you find out that in the sign that you're other than the smell, is there other indications why a house is an otter as opposed to a raccoon or a skunk or something else?
Latrines, otters do create a latrine site.
Okay.
Trapper's term call it a toilet.
Yeah.
So that's another big sign. You're
It,
also going to find
inside or
parts
outside the house?
outside.
Outside the house. Okay.
Yep, and it's going to be usually in they all tend to get together in a communal area, tumble about, play, then they all head out together.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. So you have, and then is there a standard hole size that they usually create, like a raccoon's, like minimum
6
of
inch
4
diameter.
inches, 6 inch diameter? Okay.
Yeah, big animal can fit through a really small spot because they're
Yeah.
long. They're not broad like a raccoon. They're very narrow.
Okay. And so once you identify that they're there and you talk about pricing with the client, then are you doing one-way doors? Are you trapping? Are you blind
Yes,
setting?
and I actually have a particular style of one-way door that Kyle Smith from Tomahawk Traps has developed for me. It's very heavy duty. It's kind of a double stage door. Some raccoon doors have that.
Yeah.
For otters, it works incredibly well. I actually had him build one big enough that it will encompass an entire crawl space vent. Because for us, we get a lot of the vents that have that, they're the plastic ones that have partition in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
They usually just bust out one of those halves. So it doesn't do any good to do a one-way door over one of them. So it's easier to do the whole thing.
Sure.
So he made me particular ones that are literally, it's like you take a Comstock, cut it in half, and that's the one-way door.
Okay. And what is the cost? And if you go to Tomahawk Live Trap, I'm assuming it's still for sale right now. Is it under your name? Is it called the Munster Trap, or is it
No?
Trap?
Somebody else came up with it, but he had me test it out and see how effective it was for otters because there's not a lot of stuff otter specific on the market.
Right.
You can talk to Kyle. I don't remember the exact name he has on there for it.
Okay.
While I was testing, I didn't really get to be allowed to advertise much for it because it was still in prototype stage.
But you're clearly saying it works, and it works.
It works incredibly well.
So you don't even have to capture them. So how long would you leave the one-way door up for?
Week and a half. Okay. The big thing is make sure you're using heavy gauge material on the other parts of the house to keep them out.
And what's heavy gauge? What's heavy gauge mean?
Heavy gauge means minimum 18 gauge metal, PVC coated. Okay. That's key.
You don't use stainless?
If I can, but at a minimum, 18 gauge PVC coated half-inch is what I use.
Okay. Is it just too expensive to use stainless or hard to work with?
Mostly it's too expensive.
Gotcha. Okay.
Whereas I can shape anything I need based off of a roll of that stuff.
Okay.
It's easier to get as well. And you can get 16 gauge works better.
16 gauge works better. And is there a manufacturer you purchase it from? Or do you have hardware stores? Sounds like lobster pot water, doesn't it?
Just about. I've ordered mine from Wildlife Control Supplies. I get the best shipping rates off of them.
Gotcha. All right, we're doing some plugs here today for some businesses. So we got Tomahawk Live Trap and Wildlife Control Supplies is getting plugged today. So 16 gauge PVC coated wire, and you find that very successful. So you're hardening the rest of the house. How high in the house do you have to harden?
About 4 feet.
4 feet.
So not like the same access points like a raccoon. Like I say, they won't climb downspouts, but they will find any weakness that they can work their head into. Okay. I've had them literally tear a door off because they didn't close the crawl space hatch all the way.
Oh my gosh.
I said crawl space door, not a living door, not a human door.
All right. Okay. It's like, holy cow. And what is this? They've got some tough otters out there. And so explain then a little bit more in terms of, so is there ever a situation where you find that you need to trap? Do you do any of the marina situations where they're defecating on boats and what have you? And so what's the process for that?
So with those, I have rigged up a type of floating set for otters. One of my favorite tricks, and this is something to keep in mind, if you can use live bait, you are guaranteed an otter.
Okay. In that, yeah, that's an important distinction because warning everybody, not every state allows live bait, so check your laws.
Please. Basically, it's like a crab pot bait box. My state allows shrimping, so I will sometimes grab just to go out, throw my shrimp trap out, grab a couple shrimp, throw them in the bait box for a crab pot, rig them in there, and then they live off of whatever grows on the bait box of the trap.
Gotcha.
They can survive off of that well enough. If you can't use live bait, I have had good success with large herring hanging in the back of the trap. The more it rots, the better it works. I don't understand why they prefer rotting over fresh, but that's what they'll take.
Does that fish need to be pinned above water, above the water line?
I've put my traps are, now this is another state thing. My traps are allowed to be submerged.
Okay.
Not all states can allow that. So the fish can be hung in the water, which is primarily what I do because I am allowed with drowning sets.
Okay.
My state does not allow relocation, so it is specifically drowning sets. Gotcha. Is what I'm allowed to.
Okay, so you have a floating trap, and so you just have the trap floating in the water, but it completely submerged, and you have the herring. Do you put any shiny objects with it, like tin, to help give it some eye appeal?
Yes, I actually use glow-in-the-dark fishing lures.
Okay.
Like the glow-in-the-dark jigs or whatever you like. Depends on what your fishing shop carries. If you can get something that flitters in the water, like I've actually taken a little piece of Mylar tape in there, hung that in there as well. Anything to be a curiosity. I mean, sky's the limit on what works for you in whatever area you are. You also want to use stuff that's similar to your environment. So I've actually hung a little tiny disco ball in one once, and they went right for it.
Wow. And so when you're setting so let's say you're evaluating a marina area, are you trying to get the trap near where the toilet is? Because typically that's the problem that they're having, isn't it?
You more want to go by where are they getting up onto the marina. So like gates, ladders, fences. If it's more of a shoreline access, you can do what's called armadillo guys do it all the time.
Oh yeah, so you're putting wings on the trap, trying to guide them in. Okay.
Otherwise, I'll actually do silt fencing and completely close off the shoreline access and just cut a hole and set the trap as a blind set double door in that area.
Nice. And so how long does your trap have to be with an animal that you said was, how long did you say it was? It was 5 feet? Up to 5? No, not 5 feet. 4 feet long?
Sea otters, yes.
Sea otter, 4 feet?
Yes, the river otters are just under 4 feet.
Okay.
Usually about 3.5 is what I on average get.
So you're using a Comstock, like a 36-inch Comstock?
Yes, the beaver style that they use, or the 12x12 double door.
Gotcha. Okay.
For the floating sets, they're single door though.
Right.
And I have and those ones are 2 traps wired together, one facing open in opposite directions.
Yeah. Okay. And do you put your herring in both traps or just one?
Both traps.
Both traps. Okay.
Because then with the doors being open on either side, with the 2 traps, they'll see it on the one side and be drawn towards it going into the other trap. Okay. And otters usually run in pairs at a minimum. So when one gets caught, the other gets distressed and tries to go in and see what's going on with the other one. And then they're in there side by side, caught in the traps.
So is that an indication where you always want to have a minimum of 2 traps at every site regardless?
Yes.
Okay, 2 traps at every site.
I have 3 of these rigs, and I have at least one, and they're all 2 trap rigs.
2 trap rigs. Okay. How long do you keep you've been hired by company X or person X, they want you to come to the marina or whatever, and they want you to they want you to put a trap for the river otter. How long do you keep the traps there before you say they're gone?
3 to 4 weeks, and I also have cameras posted up in other areas.
Okay, and so does your state allow people to check the traps themselves, or do you have to go out and check them? Okay.
Yeah, my state does allow it. I have done cameras and other sensor devices on it for areas where somebody can't reliably do it all the time.
Okay. And do you have a particular brand that you like the best in terms of your remote monitoring?
I am a bigger fan of the Mink Police, mainly because the case itself is completely waterproof and can be used up to a foot underwater. So it doesn't matter if the thing gets wet.
Okay, and repeat that. I didn't quite catch it.
Mink police.
Mink police. I haven't heard of that one. Tell me about it.
They're based out of Denmark.
Oh,
is where
okay.
they originally come from, and I'm a big fan of their coverage design as opposed to like Skyhawk or any of the other places, because it's a 1-year payment for. I have 5 units,
Okay.
and I pay like $50 for all 5 of them for the year, and for the service.
How's that possible? That's amazing.
That's their network. That's what they prefer. They're a little more hands-on management because they do require a toggle that it's a magnet that sits on the unit.
Right.
And you tie the magnet to the trap door.
Right.
So when the door closes, it pulls that magnet off and sends off a text message immediately saying that the trap has been triggered.
Wow, that's an amazing. And so they're using just regular cell phone lines?
Yeah, it's not 4G, it's 2G or
Sure,
whatever it is.
yeah, they're using the low bandwidth one, which is fine because you're just getting a ping practically with probably a code on it saying the trap is sprung.
And you can name it. They all have a serial number on it. So they're my preferred method.
That is amazing. That's an amazing price. And what do they work with Verizon? Do they work with?
Yeah, Verizon, AT&T. They have a couple. It's you just request an American SIM card, and it just works.
Oh my gosh!
You don't have to sign up with any company in particular. They just use the low band network, and it works amazingly. Wow. I have a little trouble with them on the islands just because.
Well, that's remote.
Nothing works on the islands.
Right. No, yeah, you have to be fair to people, right? I mean, it's like Montana. Like people say, oh, you know, where do you don't get cell service? Well, you do, but if you're in national forest land, if you get in a mile or so, you're probably not going to get coverage after that point. So.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, but yes.
Mink police. I might have seen them somewhere. That's amazing. I'm going to go check it out. So I'm not even in the business of doing wildlife control for people.
They're a little more expensive per unit. It's like $250 per unit to buy.
Yeah. Okay.
But you can do a lot of your own maintenance with it. You can order parts and they just ship it to you. You don't have to send out the unit. The tough part with them is they do require 4 AA batteries, but those last 6 months if you get the rechargeables.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Energizer Ultimate Lithium. They've worked very well. That's what was recommended to me by a guy who did a lot of trail camera surveys for deer work, and that's what they used. And I'll tell you, I don't get any money from Everready, but I'll tell you that is Everready Ultimate Lithium AA's are amazing.
Are those rechargeables?
They are not, but I kind of prefer that myself. But in terms of the amount of, and there's even some research behind it as well, that in terms of how long the batteries work under those types of long-term conditions where they just need like high energy for a short period of time.
Sure.
And so, and I've been happy with it. I got turned on it when I was at the university. So
sure,
definitely. But without a doubt, if you're certainly rechargeables would work if you're going to be, most people aren't leaving their stuff out there for weeks and weeks at a time. So you can always throw in new batteries. Well, that's an amazing. So what else?
So positive set also is incredibly effective.
Yeah. Positive sets. And Wendy, what makes you decide to use a positive set as opposed to a one-way door?
Primarily island or not. And also if it's a condo, I try to do positive set more than I will do a one-way door. Just because
you don't want it breaking in somewhere else?
Correct. That's the main reason. If it's like a standalone home or a few little cabins that could be handled all at the same time, I'll do a one-way door. Gotcha. Usually if I have a bigger property to manage, I'll just take them away completely.
Wow. And so this type of this type of work for your business is in like, what is this, 20% of your business, 10% of your business?
I'd say 20 to 25.
Wow. Okay.
So I get a lot of work off of it. It's kind of becoming my niche out here.
Excellent. Any, now one of the dangers, is there any diseases associated with river otters that can wipe out the population like we had in Massachusetts, like with rabies, with raccoons that took them out?
Yep, rabies is a thing. I mean, all warm-blooded mammals. They also can carry chlamydia.
Really?
Giardia is another one. The usuals, leptospirosis. There was one. I'm looking through my notes
Chlamydia,
here.
the bird kind?
Yes.
Okay.
Or it's an offshoot of that. I'm looking through my notes here and I can't find it again.
Okay.
If I find the specific, I'll send it over to you and we can
That'd be
discuss it
great.
another time.
Sure, absolutely. So Giardia, of course, rabies, any warm-blooded mammal can have rabies. That's certainly true. So Giardia, so make sure you wash your hands, folks, before you have that hamburger.
Distemper as well. Canine distemper.
Canine distemper. So they can infect a dog potentially then if they had a
Yes.
tussle with a dog. Okay.
And they will fight. These guys are probably, I have actually lost part of my jacket to an otter. I accidentally came around a corner and came face to face with one, and there were pups. And needless to say, I lost part of my Carhartt jacket sleeve to that otter, and he can have it.
Yeah, without a doubt. So do you recommend having tight mesh to keep them from biting you through the cage or scratching you, or is it just basically if they're outside of a cage, do you have to get can you use a 1/2 inch by 1 inch mesh, or can you get away with a 1 inch by 1 inch mesh?
I've actually gotten away with 1.5 by 1.5.
Oh, okay. All right.
Like on the Comstock beavers.
Yeah, so you're not worried about them reaching through the claw or something, scratch like a raccoon
Not at all.
would. No, not at all.
Not at all. They bite. They're first to bite, but the thing about them is that, like a weasel, if you've ever seen a weasel attack a muskrat or a rabbit, they can literally turn themselves inside out to bite you. So if it comes to wrangling one, like a loose animal in a convenience store, or like I've actually had a loose otter inside of a marina convenience store.
Okay.
If you do not get that snare pole on them, either at the shoulders or the waist, you lost it. They have no neck per se. They're literally head and torso. Okay. They're so fast and flexible. You got to be fast with them.
So where do you try to catch them? Behind the front legs or in front of the front legs?
I prefer in front of the front legs because it gives you better head control.
Yeah.
Because they have fish teeth. They have the super sharp, fine grabbing a fish type of teeth. They don't have the big canines like a raccoon does.
Right.
So they can actually do more laceration to you. But I'm very much not worried about clawing. Right. Their claws they're more blunt for digging than actual like scratching.
Okay. And so obviously they attack. And so are there signs of an animal when other than it coming at you, does it give you any body language before it lunges, or it's just game on?
A lot of huffing. They do a lot of huffing and chuffing at you. Okay. I have a video. I actually had it at the conference as well, of one in a cage, and you can hear the different vocalizations it does, like as a very aggressive sounding animal.
Okay. Well, maybe be a time for another podcast here. The sounds of a river otter. You hear this one, run.
Start crawling the other way.
Right. Well, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to have touched on that you would want our pesky podcast listeners to know?
Oh, let's see. Just kind of touching through my notes here. I think I've covered up most of it. Yeah, channel sets like between culverts is another good blind set if you have otters going between different areas. Another thing you can do is actually bed the trap in super fine sand. They love rolling in super soft stuff. Oh,
interesting. So a cage trap in super fine sand?
Yeah, double door, wide trap. It needs to be one of the big ones. All right. Because they're going to run up to it and just start rolling in it.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely for a change up. Any training videos in the future for you?
Maybe. Just kind of, we'll see what I'm able to put together. I'm in the middle of a super busy time for me right now.
Yeah, so. Just wondering because this is because it's definitely a niche field. So definitely, if you come out with one, definitely come back and we'll hawk your product for you. So that'll be. Sure. I think people would be interested because I think some of these techniques would work elsewhere. And there's no reason why it wouldn't work anywhere. All right. Well, thank you very much. Let me get all the information correct here. You've all been listening to Jon Munsterman. He is the certified wildlife control professional. If you're interested in that certification, definitely reach out to the National Wildlife Control Operators Association. He is the operator of Pathfinder Wildlife Services, and his website is pathfinderwildlife.com. And he's been talking about river otters. Jon, thank you very much for attending with us. And everyone else, remember, this is Living the Wildlife. Why? Because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. And we're looking for sponsors. Definitely reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. If you have comments, suggestions for a show, yes, even criticisms, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, Jon. Be well,
Absolutely.
everybody.